Now, we were talking about how Fatima prophecies relate to a transition in terms of power, how regimes are going to be toppled, and there's going to be an accounting for all the evil actions that occurred, that are continuing into this 21st century. Now, it's interesting because we see it, the tip of the iceberg here with the so-called sexual harassment. We see the resignations of Senator Al Franken, Congressman John Conyers, Hollywood figures including, of course, Harvey Weinstein, and the actor who was involved in sexual harassment allegations, Kevin Spacey. And we see television personalities, Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose, Bill O'Reilly, all having been accused of sexual harassment, some having to resign. So what these people have in common is that they were essentially hypocrites. They were holding themselves out as being people to be exercise a kind of influence on society, disproportionate to their virtues as human beings. In other words, they were holding themselves out to be somebody that they were actually not. They were just people who were like to bully women and take advantage of women, and for their own sexual gratification. So this is the beginning right now. You see, it has to start small, because this is going to build up to where we have to replace these, what St. John Paul called structures of sin in one of his encyclicals. Solicitato Re Socialis is the name of the encyclical. But he talked about structures of sin that have to be dealt with, basically. And so, because it's pervasive in society, it's basically called, in psychological terms, it would be called people of the lie. You see, there's this pervasive evil, and there are people who start with small lies and small attempts to distort the truth, basically, in their lives. And then this builds up over time to where it becomes a structure of sin. So this pervades our entire society now, from the military, government, the media, the social media. It's all there. It's right in front of our faces. And so it's very difficult to live a good life in our society, because we're all caught up in these structures of sin. So, now, it's true that there may be some people who have been accused of sexual harassment who were innocent. That is true. But these high-profile cases, it's almost certain that to some extent these people were involved in these structures of sin and using their positions of power or control to take advantage of women. Of course, this works the other way. There could be a woman taking advantage of men, or men taking advantage of younger men. There's very different possibilities in all this. Now, but the important thing to look at is, where is this going? Where is this going for America? Let's take as an example. Okay, well, you see, things are going to be playing out to where Our Lady, whose feast day we commemorate today on December 8th, the Immaculate Conception, okay, she is the Mother of God, so she basically is being in a position of power over heaven and earth. So, to the extent that these kinds of occurrences are a deviation away from truth, they're going to have to be brought down, you see, because there are regimes now that are going to actually topple because of this. Because, you see, it was all on this foundation of the so-called sexual revolution, beginning, and actually began way before 1960, the Kinsey Report and all that, but it became, it reached a point of, visibility in the 1960s and after that, because we were going toward the end of the 20th century, in which evil was predominant. Satan was basically in control, as Leo XIII had been foretold in a dream before the 20th century, toward the end of the 19th century. And so, even after the year 2000, we still had September 11th in 2001, which was an act of evil. It was an act of by the elites of this country, who think that they control the world, the universe, because they have a lot of money, But they don't. I mean, the bankers, they don't control anything, you see. God controls the universe. So these people were in rebellion against God. That's the key point. And so they basically felt that they wanted to impress upon the American people how much power they have, these people, how much power they have over us, who they despise and look down upon as being, pawns, basically, people that they can manipulate. So the important thing to remember is that we are all come from the same source. We all are brought into life with the original sin. The exception, of course, was Our Lady, whose feast day of the Immaculate Conception today, on December 8th, in the season of Advent, 2017. She represents one of the single example of a person like us who doesn't have original sin, because Christ, of course, being the Son of God, also has a divine nature. So he, in a sense, is far above us as ordinary mortal human beings. But Mary was just like us, except that she didn't have this condition that we have called original sin. So we're going beyond now this sexual revolution and these allegations of sexual harassment. So we have to look at what things are going to happen in the future. We have, assuming that these politicians are going to be replaced, at least in the short term, by people who have the same types of values they had, whether we're talking about Senator Franken in Minnesota or Representative Conyers in Michigan. Okay, whoever is going to replace these people in the short run, it doesn't really matter, because they've already demonstrated that their lifestyles were not in accord with what we value as a people in America. You see, we're a Christian nation. So we have to now be very wary about all of these mass shootings and things like that, because just like on September 11th, it was these elites who were trying to trick us into believing that some other people, these bad Muslims, you see, were the ones that were out to get us. But in effect, what they wanted to do, they wanted to exert control. You see, they have more money than they can ever use to enjoy goods in this lifetime. You see, most of these elite people, by the way, are old men. You see, they have very few years to live, and they can't enjoy anything with all the billions and trillions of dollars they may have. Or even if we look at someone like Bill and Melinda Gates, can they really enjoy anything with all those billions of dollars that they have in their bank accounts? No, they can't enjoy anything with that. So they want to exercise control, you see. And they have this kind of evil disposition toward controlling other people, which St. Augustine talked about. So these are the people that are going to be toppled from power. It's not necessarily the people in government, like Donald Trump as president or Mike Pence as vice president. That's not what we're talking. We're talking about the people that are exercising a type of disproportionate control as to who they are as people. Most of these people are basically low-life people that don't believe in God, and they're very selfish. So we don't want these people telling us how to live our lives. So this is what's going to happen over time. It's going to take a long time, but we know that Our Lady promised an heir of peace at Fatima, and all of the preconditions for this fulfillment have already taken place. There were millions of people, billions throughout the world, who were praying the Rosary, who were observing reverence to Our Lady on the first Saturdays of every month, within different particular years during that time, from Our Lady's prophecies in 1917 all the way up to 100 years later in 2017. You see, and people are continuing to get these practices, because this is what Our Lady asked for. And this is going to involve a change in our lives, which is going to have an effect on the entire world. So it doesn't matter if a person is a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, any other particular form of belief they may have that's not against Christ, the Savior of the world. All of these people can help to bring this new era of peace about. You see, and we're doing this right now. So this is only the tip of the iceberg. Look for other signs as we move along. I think maybe there will be litigation brought by the Justice Department, criminal charges brought against certain individuals who were involved in using aborted babies as a way to make money by selling their body parts, things like that. All of this is illegal, and it's against the natural law, and so these people are going to be brought to justice. They're going to have to face the consequences for what they've done. So that's just the way life is. If that didn't happen, they would almost certainly end up in hell, because they're doing things that are against the natural law, against the way God created man and woman. So it's actually a good thing that Attorney General Sessions and the Justice Department are going to be prosecuting these evil doers in America. That is, again, one more step along the way, because as these things happen, it's going to be a progressive sort of a thing. We start out with the small items on the agenda, such as men who are accused of sexual harassment, for instance, having to resign their positions or having to lose their jobs, if they're in fact guilty. If they're not guilty, then obviously they shouldn't have to resign. But for the ones that are, this is a good thing, because that will bring them back to show more reverence for God and to maybe change their lifestyles. You see, Hollywood, for instance, filmmakers don't have to push things like pornography and things like that. You know, these kinds of values have to change, and they will change, because this is the direction that the world is now moving. So we don't want to be afraid of Islam. It could well be that Islam will become the dominant religion, let's say in Europe, for instance, because the Europeans themselves have lost faith in God. Well, this is not necessarily a bad thing. The church will not suddenly disappear and go away. The church will still be present from Rome, but it will be a whole different viewpoint that becomes the dominant viewpoint. Well, this is something that just part of life. I mean, eventually, as this progresses on, these Muslims who believe in a certain type of understanding of God or their creator will learn more about the truth, and eventually a lot of them will become Christians. We know that China already, especially among the youth of China, more and more are becoming disillusioned with communism and are turning to the church, to Christ, as an answer to life's problems for them, because Christ is actually is the way, the truth, and the life. That's what he told us. So, as again I say, we can look forward to this. I mean, the people that have power now have reason to be disillusioned, to be afraid, and to worry, because they're not going to be in power very much longer. The wealthy are going to have to give up that wealth, you see, and other people are going to then acquire material control over businesses and those sorts of things, to exercise their control in a just sort of a way. But we need a solidarity. We don't want to have divisions between the poor people and the rich people, or the working people and capital. You see, capital is not a bad thing in itself, because that provides the means of production, so that gives workers something productive to do that benefits all of mankind. So it's actually all for the common good. That's what we have to be focusing on, is the common good. When capitalists become selfish and try and take advantage of the workers and try and steal what the workers are actually producing and appropriate that to themselves by trickery or some other means, that is evil. We cannot allow it to happen, you see. So this is what we've been moving toward all along. You know, the human race has been moving toward this ideal of peace and justice. So we are now at that point, at the beginning of this era of peace. And this may last well over 1,000 years, I would imagine, because the rise of Islam it's going to require time before Islam takes root in Europe, for example. So it's going to take many years for this to happen. So while this is happening, concurrently with that, we are already experiencing this era of peace. So we have to look at these people who are actually causing terrorism and using disinformation and trying to trick people, trying to demoralize Christians and other people of goodwill, and saying, oh, you guys, all you are is just pawns and you have no control, and the wealthy elite are going to always have power over you. See, they use this technique by putting out what appears to be an expose on what really happened, let's say in 9/11 or in Las Vegas or in Charlottesville or in Texas or any place like that, telling us what really happened on YouTube, for instance. They're only trying to demoralize us, you see, because they don't have any power. They're weak, and they are losers, and they're going to lose. So I ask everybody to keep praying. That's the main thing. And you will have your reward in heaven. Don't worry so much about what you're going to get out of this life, because it doesn't amount to much of anything, you see. Justice is going to prevail in this life, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. So get ready. We're in this cosmic battle right now. There's going to be toppling of regimes throughout the world, and there's going to be a new era of peace, which we're already experiencing now, spread throughout the whole world. So everyone is going to enjoy much more happiness in this life, and for those who are going to heaven, who are already predestined for that, keep being faithful to God as you understand God. Thank you. Have a great day.